Good evening. Today, I want to explore a behavior that is often misunderstood, sometimes stigmatized, but deeply human, the act of cutting everyone off. We've all encountered someone who abruptly ends relationships, ceases communication without warning, or seems to vanish from social circles. At first glance, it can seem cold, irrational, or even cruel. But from a psychological perspective, this behavior is rarely random. It is often a reflection of complex internal struggles, coping mechanisms, and profound emotional experiences. Let us begin by considering the role of defense mechanisms. For many people who cut others off, this behavior serves as a protective shield. Life inevitably exposes us to disappointment, betrayal, or emotional pain. For some, the memory of past hurt is so vivid that they choose to preemptively disengage, believing it is safer to isolate themselves than to risk experiencing further emotional damage. This is not a matter of cruelty, it is an instinctive effort at self-preservation. Closely tied to this is the struggle with trust and vulnerability. Human relationships require openness, and openness requires trust. However, for individuals who have repeatedly experienced betrayal, deception, or inconsistency, trust becomes a fragile resource. Once that trust is threatened or perceived to be violated, the safest response may appear to be cutting ties entirely. Vulnerability feels dangerous, and isolation becomes the more predictable alternative. Another dimension of this behavior is the need for control and autonomy. Life, with all its unpredictability, can be overwhelming. Relationships, in particular, carry an inherent uncertainty. People can act in ways we do not anticipate, feelings can change, and expectations can clash. For some individuals, the act of ending relationships decisively allows them to regain control over their immediate environment and emotional state. It is not necessarily an act of malice, rather, it is an attempt to restore equilibrium in a world they perceive as volatile. Interestingly, this behavior can also be understood as an extreme form of boundary setting. Boundaries are essential for healthy relationships, but not everyone knows how to communicate them effectively. Cutting people off may be a blunt, yet clear, method of maintaining personal space and protecting mental health. In this context, it is less about rejecting others and more about asserting the necessity of safety, autonomy, and emotional stability. We also find that many who cut everyone off have heightened sensitivity to criticism and conflict. Minor disagreements, perceived slights, or subtle criticisms can feel magnified. For them, engaging in confrontation or negotiation may seem too exhausting or risky. Avoiding conflict entirely by severing ties may appear to be the simplest, most effective solution, even if it comes at the cost of social connection. To fully understand this behavior, it is crucial to acknowledge the influence of past experiences. Early life events shape our understanding of relationships. Experiences such as parental neglect, inconsistent caregiving, or repeated betrayals can normalize abrupt disengagement as a coping strategy. These individuals have learned, often unconsciously, that detachment ensures survival and protects the self from harm. What might seem like avoidance to an outsider is often a deeply ingrained survival mechanism shaped by life experiences. Finally, despite appearances, cutting people off is rarely a sign of indifference. On the contrary, many individuals experience profound internal conflict and emotional loneliness. The act of severing ties provides immediate relief, reducing stress and potential conflict, but it can also intensify long-term feelings of isolation. Behind the apparent detachment lies a complex emotional landscape, fear of rejection, desire for safety, and yet a deep, often unacknowledged longing for connection. In conclusion, the psychology of people who cut everyone off is not simple, and it is not inherently negative. It is a coping mechanism, a response to past pain, and an attempt to navigate the unpredictable terrain of human relationships. While it may seem extreme or puzzling, it reflects universal human concerns, the need for safety, the desire for control, the pain of betrayal, and the struggle between connection and self-preservation. Understanding this behavior requires empathy, insight, and recognition of the underlying psychological processes. For those who have been cut off, it is important to resist judgment and instead acknowledge the complexity of human coping. And for those who engage in this behavior themselves, understanding the psychological roots of their actions can be the first step toward healthier, more sustainable ways of maintaining relationships, without sacrificing emotional safety. The act of cutting people off, when seen through a psychological lens, is not merely a rejection of others, it is a reflection of internal struggles, protective instincts, and the delicate balance between vulnerability and self-preservation. By exploring these dynamics, we move closer to understanding the deeply human motivations behind behaviors that are often misunderstood.